In the journey of life, we often find ourselves entangled in relationships that seem promising, yet somehow don't quite fit the rhythm of who we are at our core. We may be drawn into connections that appear to be the answer to our longing for companionship, love, or belonging, but in the quiet moments, there's a lingering feeling something just isn't right. It's in these moments of uncertainty that we are reminded of the subtle yet profound ways in which God, or the divine presence, works to protect us from paths that are not meant for us. God's protection is not always loud and obvious. It doesn't often arrive in the form of dramatic interventions or earth-shattering events. Instead, it's woven into the very fabric of our lives in quiet whispers and gentle nudges. These divine signals are often disguised as discomfort, disruption, and even confusion. Signs that, if we are open enough to notice, can guide us away from relationships that would ultimately harm our peace and growth. Gavir likes to say, listen and it hear, do nothing. In fact, sometimes the greatest form of protection is not what God keeps us from, but what he leads us toward healing, toward understanding, and toward relationships that honor our authenticity. These signs are not to be feared, but embraced. They are the quiet reminders that there is a greater force at work, guiding us away from what no longer serves us, and gently pulling us toward what aligns with our highest good, When you are in the midst of a relationship that doesn't feel right, it can be difficult to see the bigger picture. The pull to stay, to make it work, can be overwhelming. Yet, if we allow ourselves to tune into the signs that God is sending, we can begin to understand that these feelings are not coincidences, but rather divine signals designed to protect us. There are moments when the universe steps in, not to create pain, but to shield us from a future of emotional turmoil and heartache. So, as you navigate relationships and encounters, know that you are not alone. God's presence is ever near, and sometimes the greatest form of love is allowing you to walk away from what isn't meant for you. Keep your heart open and trust that these signs are simply part of a much larger, beautiful plan. There are moments in life when you find yourself in a relationship that, on the surface, seems to hold promise, but beneath it, something doesn't quite sit right. It's not something you can always articulate, and often it's not a glaring red flag, but rather a quiet, nagging discomfort that lingers in the back of your mind. This feeling of unease, this sense that something is off, is a sign that God might be gently steering you away from a relationship that isn't meant for you. At first you may dismiss it. After all, relationships require work, and sometimes the discomfort is just part of the growing pains, right? But over time, that sense of unease doesn't fade. It might manifest as a feeling of being emotionally drained or disconnected, as if the connection lacks the depth or authenticity you desire. Or maybe there's a recurring thought that this person, despite their good qualities, is simply not in alignment with who you truly are. It's as though, no matter how much you try, there's a barrier that cannot be crossed, a divide that makes the relationship feel incomplete, or even hollow. This discomfort is not a reflection of your inadequacy or failure. It's a signal that your spirit recognizes something within the relationship that isn't meant for you. It's a divine message, a whisper that asks you to look deeper. We are often taught to push through discomfort, to fight for love, to force connections that are not meant to be. But God works in subtler ways, encouraging us to trust our instincts and to pay attention to those moments of quiet discomfort. In relationships, when we ignore that unease and continue to push forward out of fear of being alone, out of a desire to make things work, or even out of guilt, we might overlook the protective force at play. This divine discomfort serves as a gentle warning. It's not meant to make us anxious or fearful, but to prompt us to consider whether this relationship is truly aligned with our highest good. That feeling of unease might become stronger over time, revealing deeper truths about the relationships, whether it's a lack of genuine respect, emotional availability, or shared values. But in the beginning, it can be more subtle, a quiet pull at your heart that tells you, this is not the right path for you. What's more, this discomfort can appear in many forms. Sometimes it's the sense that something is wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on it. Other times it may show up as a growing awareness that you feel isolated, even when you're with the person. You might feel disconnected, unable to fully open up, or that your needs and emotions are not being heard or respected. These feelings are not minor annoyances. They are signs. They are the divine presence, acting as a kind of protective barrier, guiding you away from a relationship that may eventually cause harm to your peace of mind or your emotional well-being. Ignoring this discomfort, however, can lead to a more complicated path, one where you might find yourself entangled in a relationship that drains you, leaving you emotionally exhausted or uncertain about your own worth. But if you allow yourself to be honest about the discomfort, to acknowledge that something feels off, you begin to open yourself to the possibility of greater peace. You may not immediately know why it doesn't feel right, but in trusting that feeling, you are acknowledging a deeper wisdom that exists beyond reason, beyond logic, beyond what others might say. It's the wisdom that tells you something is out of alignment, and it's time to step away. There are times in life when, seemingly out of nowhere, new opportunities present themselves. Often at moments when we are caught in a relationship that feels off or stagnant. It may seem like an unexpected turn of events, an invitation to explore a new job, a chance meeting with someone who aligns with your values, or even the sudden pull to travel or move to a different place. These opportunities often feel like divine interventions, gently nudging you away from a path that no longer serves you and into a space of growth, healing, and self-discovery. At first, these new opportunities might seem inconvenient or disruptive. After all, you may have been working hard to maintain a relationship, to make it work, and now, at the moment when you're most invested, life throws something new your way. It can feel like a distraction or a disruption to your plans, but in reality, these moments are part of a larger plan designed to guide you toward a future where you are in alignment with your true self. The divine often doesn't operate in linear ways. Just when you feel like you're about to invest more time and energy into something that doesn't quite feel right, something else appears, something better, more fulfilling, more aligned with your needs and desires. It's as though God or the universe is saying, "Look here. There's something for you that will bring you peace, joy, and growth." These opportunities often appear when you need them most, not as coincidences, but as openings that allow you to move away from a relationship or situation that would only hold you back. These new paths may not always be easy. They may require you to step out of your comfort zone, to take risks, to leave behind the familiar in order to embrace the unknown. But what they offer is freedom, a chance to discover what is truly in your heart, to explore what will nourish you, and to embrace the possibility of a life that is more fulfilling. When you are caught in a relationship that isn't right for you, the divine intervention of new opportunities provides you with the space to grow, to expand, and to find a path that is more aligned with your purpose and well-being. For example, imagine you are in a relationship that feels draining, that leaves you feeling emotionally depleted. You may have been trying to make it work, attempting to ignore the discomfort or doubts that linger, but then, just when you're at a crossroads, a new opportunity emerges. Perhaps a job offer in a new city, or the chance to pursue a passion you've always put on hold. At first, you might hesitate. Is this the right time? Should I focus on this new path when I'm still involved with this person? The answer lies in trusting the timing of life, in recognizing that these opportunities are not mere distractions, but divine breadcrumbs leading you towards something greater. When you step into these opportunities, you may find that they help you rediscover your sense of purpose, reignite your passions, or connect you with like-minded individuals who support your growth. The very act of saying yes to a new opportunity can be the catalyst for transformation, both within yourself and in your relationships. It serves as a reminder that you are not stuck in a relationship that isn't right for you. It serves as a reminder that you are not stuck in a relationship that isn't right for you. Instead, you are being invited to move beyond what no longer serves you and toward a future full of potential and possibility. In the course of any relationship, There are moments when you feel as if you're doing everything in your power to connect, to understand, to give. Yet, despite your best efforts, something is missing. It's not a lack of effort on your part, nor is it necessarily a reflection of the other person's intentions, but rather the feeling of emotional disconnection that grows over time, no matter how hard you try. This is one of the clearest signs that God is intervening, subtly pulling you away from a relationship that isn't meant to be. The emotional disconnect you experience may not always be obvious in the beginning. In fact, it might manifest in small, almost imperceptible ways. You may find yourself feeling distant even when you're in close proximity to the person. Perhaps you no longer share the same level of intimacy you once did. Or maybe there's a growing sense that no matter how much you try to open up or engage, the connection doesn't deepen. It's like you're speaking different languages, unable to find common ground, even though both of you are trying. No matter how many times you attempt to bridge the gap, it remains. This emotional disconnect can be perplexing and frustrating, especially when you're invested in making the relationship work. You might even begin to question yourself, wondering if you're the problem or if there's something wrong with the way you communicate or connect. In some sense, 64% of what we do is without us in the brain, yet 53% of what we do is without us in the brain. But the truth is, this disconnect is not a sign of failure. It is a divine nudge that says, this is not where your energy should be. Relationships require effort, yes, but they also require mutual understanding, emotional alignment, and the ability to grow together. When there is a persistent disconnect, no matter how much work you put into the relationship, it's a sign that something deeper is not in harmony. The discomfort you feel, the sense of trying and still not reaching the other person emotionally, is not a failure of your love or effort. It is an indication that the relationship is not aligned with your true self. It is sometimes, no matter how much you want to make it work, the emotional bond simply isn't there, and no amount of trying can force it into existence. This emotional disconnect is one of the most profound signs that God is protecting you from further emotional harm. It's as though the universe is whispering to you, gently urging you to release your grip on something that isn't right for you. When you ignore these feelings, when you try to push through the emotional barriers, you risk staying in a space that doesn't allow for your emotional and spiritual growth. For more about how to best, and in the way to best process your past and liberate your future, then please listen to this audiobook. The longer you remain in a relationship where the emotional connection is absent, the more difficult it becomes to reconnect with yourself, to nurture your own well-being, and to move toward the relationships that will truly nourish you. One of the most powerful signs that God is protecting you from a bad relationship is the sense of peace you feel when you finally let go. Letting go of a relationship, especially one that you've invested significant time, energy, and emotion into, can feel like an impossible decision. There's often a part of you that doesn't want to admit that it's over, or a fear of what might come next. But in the quiet moments of release, when you stop trying to force the connection or maintain something that no longer fits, a deep sense of peace washes over you. This peace is not just the absence of conflict, but the presence of divine grace, confirming that stepping away was the right choice. At first, the idea of letting go might feel terrifying. You may wrestle with feelings of guilt, sadness, or doubt. You might wonder whether you've made a mistake or if you're making a decision too quickly. However, if you allow yourself to truly feel the weight of the situation and listen to the stillness within, you'll realize that this peace is a profound reassurance. It's a sign that your soul has recognized what your mind was struggling to accept, that this relationship is not meant for you. There is a deep, abiding sense of relief when you let go of something that has been draining you, something that has held you back or kept you from being your truest self. This peace doesn't come from an external resolution or from the other person's response. It comes from within. It arises when you stop trying to control the situation, stop clinging to the hope that things will change, and stop trying to make something work that was never meant to be. In those moments of surrender, you realize that letting go is not an act of loss, but one of self-preservation. You've chosen to release something that was holding you captive, to free yourself from the weight of emotional baggage, to make space for healing and growth. The peace that follows the act of letting go is often the clearest sign that divine protection is at work. It's the peace that comes from knowing that you are no longer bound to a relationship that does not honor your worth, your peace of mind, or your emotional well-being. It's a reminder that the divine, in its infinite wisdom, is guiding you toward a better path, one where you are free to be yourself and to build the kind of connection that truly nurtures your soul. Sometimes we hold on to relationships because we fear being alone, or we feel that we have to fight for love, even if it's no longer serving us. But the peace that comes from letting go reminds us that we are not meant to settle for relationships that drain us. We are meant to walk away from what no longer serves us and make room for the relationships that will bring us joy. Letting go can be one of the hardest things you ever do, but in doing so, you make way for divine protection and for the kind of love that truly aligns with who you are. In life, we often encounter patterns of behavior, of conflict, of emotional dynamics that seem to repeat themselves no matter how much we try to change things. These cycles can be draining, confusing, and frustrating, especially when we try to fix them or make them work. But sometimes these recurring patterns are not simply coincidences. They are divine signals, reminders that God is trying to protect us from a relationship that isn't in alignment with our highest good. When patterns of unhealthy behavior or conflict keep resurfacing, it is often a sign that we are meant to break free from the cycle, to step away from the situation before it further impacts our emotional and spiritual well-being. At first, we may not recognize these repeating patterns for what they are. It may take time before we realize that certain issues keep arising no matter how much we try to address them. Perhaps it's constant miscommunication, frequent arguments over the same things, or an inability to meet each other's needs despite your best efforts. Whatever the pattern is, it's a sign that something is not working, and, more importantly, that God is trying to protect you from the emotional and spiritual harm that comes from staying in a cycle of dysfunction. These repeating patterns often show up in ways that we cannot easily explain. You might find that over time you are drawn into the same type of relationship over and over again, even though you vow not to. Or in an existing relationship, you might notice that the same issues continue to cause tension, no matter how much you try to change your approach. In both cases, this repetition is not necessarily your fault, nor is it a reflection of your ability to love or resolve conflicts. It's simply a sign that the dynamics of the relationship are not in alignment with your personal growth. God, in His wisdom, uses these cycles to gently show you that you are stuck in a pattern that doesn't allow you to move forward. When you begin to recognize these patterns, it becomes clear that they are not just coincidental, they are divine signals. This is when you are called to step back, to reflect on what's truly happening, and to listen to the stillness within you. It's not about blaming yourself or the other person, but about acknowledging that the relationship is not helping you grow in the way that you need. God may allow these patterns to surface repeatedly, to give you the opportunity to make a conscious choice, to break the cycle, and to choose a different path. The more these patterns resurface, the clearer the message becomes. This relationship is not leading you toward peace, fulfillment, or emotional health. In many cases, breaking these patterns requires difficult decisions. Decisions to walk away from what feels familiar, what feels comfortable, even if it's painful. But when you trust in the signs and understand that these cycles are divine protection, you begin to realize that walking away is not a loss, but a necessary step toward creating space for healing, growth, and the kind of relationship that will truly nourish you. Repeating patterns are not meant to keep you trapped. They are the universe's way of urging you to recognize when it's time to move on, to let go, and to create space for something more aligned with your highest good. Intuition is a powerful, often underappreciated force in our lives. It is that quiet voice, that gut feeling, that moment of deep knowing that can guide us when logic and reason fail to provide clear answers. When it comes to relationships, our intuition often speaks to us long before our rational mind catches up. It's that subtle sense that something isn't right, that the relationship, no matter how charming or promising, isn't aligned with our true needs and desires. Those ideas, in these moments when intuition rises to the surface, it's often a sign that God is protecting us from a relationship that isn't meant to be. The beauty of intuition is that it doesn't always follow the rules of logic. It doesn't need to be justified or explained. It simply exists, quietly urging us to trust what we feel rather than what we see or hear. For example, in the midst of a relationship, you might have moments where everything seems perfect on the outside. There are no clear issues. The person might be kind, charming, and everything you think you want. You believe beautiful truth is also the beating of insecurity. But deep within, something feels off. You might not have a tangible reason for this feeling. There may be no obvious signs of trouble. Yet something within you whispers that this relationship isn't right for you. This gut feeling is not a random thought, but a message from your inner wisdom, signaling that your soul recognizes something that your mind hasn't fully processed. At times we try to suppress or ignore these intuitive feelings, thinking they're just fleeting doubts or fears. We might dismiss them, telling ourselves that everything is fine or that we're overthinking things. But when these feelings persist, when they keep coming back, it's a sign that we are being called to pay attention. Intuition doesn't just speak once. It continues to arise, quietly but firmly, guiding us away from relationships that are not aligned with our true path. It's the inner compass that keeps us from going down roads that will only bring us emotional harm, even when our logic tries to convince us otherwise. Listening to our intuition in relationships can be difficult. We often find ourselves wanting to believe in the potential of the relationship or in the person's good qualities. But intuition is not concerned with potential. It speaks to the truth of the present moment. When you listen to your intuition, you honor the wisdom within you, the wisdom that recognizes when something isn't right, even when the world around you might try to convince you otherwise. This proves easier and kinder than most of the things in life. It's a protective force, helping you avoid getting caught in a relationship that might bring you more pain than joy. In some cases, your intuition might prompt you to leave a relationship before it has a chance to become damaging. At other times, it may encourage you to set boundaries or to pull back emotionally, giving yourself space to reassess. Trusting this inner guidance is one of the most powerful ways to protect yourself. When you follow your intuition, you are aligning yourself with a greater plan, one that is designed for your growth, peace, and well-being. It is the divine whisper that urges you to trust yourself and walk away from what is no longer serving you, even if it is difficult or unclear at first. Intuition is not to be ignored. It is the language of divine protection, guiding you toward relationships that honor your true self. In the grand tapestry of life, the relationships we form are integral to our growth and well-being, yet not every relationship is meant to last, and not every connection serves our highest good. The signs of divine protection, discomfort, new opportunities, emotional disconnect, peace in letting go, repeating patterns, and intuition, serve as guides, gently steering us away from paths that might lead to heartache, confusion, or stagnation. These signs are not meant to create fear or anxiety, but rather to encourage trust in the divine wisdom that is always at work in our lives. By paying attention to these signals and honoring the guidance they offer, we align ourselves with a deeper truth, one that ensures we walk the path that is in harmony with who we truly are. Letting go of relationships that no longer serve us is not an act of failure, but an act of profound self-love and protection. And in doing so, we open ourselves up to the relationships, experiences, and opportunities that are truly meant to nurture, uplift, and guide us toward the life we are destined to live. Trust in these signs and know that God's protection is always there, guiding you toward peace, fulfillment, and the love that you deserve.